Great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Tomasz Mura and to our distinguished panelists for this last conversation, a frank, honest, and challenging conversation around the controversies and dilemmas associated with European strategic autonomy in respect to nuclear capability and deterrence. It was a sobering set of reflections and certainly a lot to take in as we continue to reflect not only on the imperative, of course, to secure our continent through credible deterrence, but also more broadly the risks associated with nuclear weapons more generally. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our next two speakers who will be in conversation over the next half an hour to discuss hard lessons learned from the front and questions relating to reforming Ukraine's warfighting edge in the wake of Russia's continued and brutal war of aggression. In the next segment, Tobias Ellwood, member of the UK Parliament between 2005 and 2024, will be in conversation with Nate Vance, a former U.S. Marine who also served as an infantryman in the Ukrainian army and is a cousin of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Nate and Tobias.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can't see a thing because these lights are extremely bright. I'm hoping somebody is out there. My name is Tobias Ellwood. I'm a former defense minister, foreign minister of the United Kingdom, and also a former soldier. And I'm delighted to be with Nate Vance, who we're going to have a conversation with. And to introduce Nate, it's probably worth putting, can we firstly shut the door, if that's possible? At the back, get a message there just so... Get them in rather than out. Don't push them out. There we go. What's been interesting about this security forum, and many of you have been coming here many years, and you wander around, there's a lot of 4-star generals, 3-star, 2-stars. There's some in the audience now. Great to see you. And we hear about the big picture. We hear about the leaders, the ministers, the former ministers, with the big ideas about what's going on in Ukraine. And the last couple of days have been cautiously optimistic to say, actually, we can win in Ukraine. We're finally, America, Britain, and Europe are on the same page. Perhaps we can then get this across the line, stop the negotiations, make it actually happen. But what I'm really pleased to say is that Nate has actually been on the front line, and we're going to explore that in a second. So, real pleasure to see you. You were a Marine. It won't have escaped the audience that you have an interesting last name, and you are related to another Vance, that also the audience will be familiar with, and that's the Vice President. So firstly, can I say welcome today? Thank you for coming. Are you in touch with your cousin?
Yeah, yes, we do speak. I mean, not every day. He's busy and I'm busy, but I did go visit him in the West Wing, and he was very receptive and gracious, to have me there, especially after some of the comments I publicly made. So yeah, we do talk.
Now, on those comments, you've been, I think, very supportive of Ukraine all the way, haven't you? But of course, this administration has sort of fluxed a little bit, left, right. Were you able to share a little bit about your thoughts to say this is something that we need to win, that this is where the fight is, that Russia must be held to account here?
I think so. He was very receptive and attentive to the things that I did say. And there were things that I said that you could tell were eye-opening for him. I'm not going to go into detail because it was a private conversation, and I don't think that's appropriate. But there were things that raised his eyebrows quite a bit. So it's a good thing. I mean, the thing about my cousin is even if you disagree with him politically, which I think a lot of people in the room do, he's not a dumb guy, right? He does listen, he does pay attention. He's intelligent, so he takes in data, and as you can see lately, the rhetoric is changing, so maybe that learning is taking place.
That's really good. Now, when you go in to see, I've been into the White House once. I think I was slated for 15 minutes. By the time it actually happened, the meeting, it was with Doug Lute, General Lute, who was National Security Advisor. I think we ended up having about 4.5 minutes. Did you get 15 minutes with your cousin, or was it a bit longer?
I got 2.5 hours.
You got 2.5 hours. Okay.
So, I mean, I understand how that scheduling works, and for him to be able to do that is a sign of respect that he's willing to sit there that long. And when we left, there was a bunch of angry people sitting in the hallway waiting for their late appointments, and he was kind of like, well, they can wait, which is a pleasant thing, especially considering my interview comments. So
right, I heard they were giving dirty looks saying, who on earth is this? This kept us waiting as well. It's a real pleasure to see you here. And why it's so important is, as I was saying, we do get the positioning, the picture from the very, very high level. And we're now going to take it very much to the front line. But before we get to Ukraine and what your experiences were, I just want to ask a couple of questions to lead us there as well. So you joined the US Marines, and you signed up straight after school, is that right?
I actually enlisted when I was 17. I had to get a waiver. So by the time I graduated basic training, I was 18. That would be illegal. But yeah, there's a waiver program, and I did that. I knew from the time I was a kid I was going to serve in some capacity. I went to the Navy recruiter, and he had a food stain on his shirt and didn't seem very interested. And then I went to the Marine recruiter, and he challenged me, like, what the hell makes you think you can join the Marines? And I was like, well, then give me the goddamn paper, you know? So he tricked me. That's a pretty common trick, by the way. They just challenge an ornery teenager, and it worked. So then I was a Marine.
Yeah. And we were speaking before, and it was fascinating to learn of your experiences in Yemen. I think you were involved with the USS Cole and so forth. Did that shape your view of where the world was going at that point?
Well, it did. I mean, as a 20-year-old who grows up in America, at that point I was 20 years old, and America is kind of a utopia. I mean, you watch the news and you might think there's violence everywhere. I grew up in Napa. It's kind of a nice place. So 20 years old, you go and you basically waltz into what is essentially a murder scene, right? It's a crime scene. And I went on the USS Cole, went down into the hole where the bombing was. The bodies had not been removed. And that's a sobering event for a 20-year-old who's not been exposed to that kind of violence before. And it kind of humbles you and lets you realize that there's evil people in this world that will kill you in a heartbeat and not think twice about it, and not lose any sleep over it. So that kind of steals. You're either gonna wilt or it's gonna stiffen your spine, and I think it stiffened my spine a little bit.
And then you also served in Iraq as well. You had time there.
Correct, but I mean I didn't do anything cool. Let's be honest. Especially not compared to what happened in Ukraine.
On reflection, it's interesting speaking to those who fought and honorably in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now looking back at how these have been rewritten in history, if you like, do you have a perspective as to what could have gone better in Iraq?
I don't know. It's such a complicated conflict. I don't really know what. I don't know. I don't know. I think we should have had clearly set objectives, accomplished them, and then got the hell out of there. Is honestly what happened. I think we allowed ourselves to get mired down in something for way too long.
Okay. It's interesting that you say that, because that nicely takes us to Ukraine. And General Ben Hodges is in the audience now. We had a lunch today, and the question was put as to what does the mission in Ukraine actually involve? What does victory actually look like? Do you have an idea in your own mind as to what victory there should look like now?
I mean, I kind of tend to agree with President Zelensky in the comments he made the other day. There's a constitutional mandate that their land is recovered, right? That their territory is recovered. Now, the difficulty with accomplishing that is it's very difficult, right? In order to, by force, push the Russians out of that territory is going to cost a huge amount of human beings and resources. I mean, and the main one is the human beings. I can get more machines, but you can't build more people, right? So achieving that objective is very difficult and hard on the Ukrainians. But I think what is important, if you have an alliance, is You say, we're fighting for victory. What is that, right? You have to define it. And then once you define that objective, you're able then to say, okay, what steps do I need to take to achieve those objectives? But until then, it's just kind of flailing, right? It's just continuing to do the same thing. And it's inappropriate, it's unfair to those Ukrainians that are in the mud right now, dying. And they are dying every day, so.
You were in America, I think, at the time when you were looking about what was going on. Serving the American flag, joining the Marines, it makes sense. I hope it's something that any American would consider at some point. Some will take the step, others won't. But to then say, I've served my country, I'm now going to go to another country and help their battles. What process, what went through your mind to take you on that journey?
That's a multifaceted answer. I don't think there's any one singular motivation that drives somebody to do something. But I think the concept of America is it's not, I mean, I'm gonna share my political beliefs a little bit. Like, you know, Ronald Reagan had that, you know, the shining city on a hill, right? And somewhat of what maybe I'm, you know, idealistic here or romanticizing things, but I think of America more as like an idea, right? The concept of freedom and liberty and things like that. And when you see injustice to the level of what was happening in Ukraine in 2022, it's just if you see it with your own eyes and you don't react to it, I don't think you're human. Or you probably need to see a therapist, maybe. I don't know what the solution is.
So the invasion took place, and then you were watching this from afar, and then you decided to pack your bags and then go to Ukraine.
Yeah, I was at work, and I was watching the news, and one of my coworkers, this was my decision process, so I don't know if I'm like the best planner in the world based on this, but one of my coworkers could see that I was upset about what I was seeing on the news, and he said, man, you should just buy a ticket. And I'll save you the exact language, but I said, F it, why not? And then I bought a ticket right then on Expedia, and I went to Warsaw, and I asked somebody at the airport, how do I get to Ukraine? And then I walked across the border. I had no plan, I knew no one, I didn't even have Google Translate. I was an idiot. Basically, don't do that in the future if you ever think about going to a war zone. That's a bad decision-making policy, but it ended up working out.
So your level of speaking Ukrainian at this point was?
Zero.
So you're relying on your English, your American English?
Yeah, I was hoping they had a good English program in Ukraine. They didn't in Lviv. But yeah, I ended up linking up with some people that helped me
Google
out.
Translate, did you lean on that at all, or there wasn't that?
Heavily. I am a rapid Google Translate user. I'm really good at it now.
So you had your friend who's then said, buy a ticket and get out of it, and that convinced you. But the rest of your family, other people around you, because I can't help thinking that when I visit America, and to some extent this is the same in Britain, it was still seen at the early stages as something a long way away. In fact, most people couldn't put Kyiv on the map, let alone where Ukraine actually might be. And this was a skirmish which looked horrible, it was wrong. But do we really want to get involved? And yet here you are, happy to slide weapons across. Yes, that seems the right thing to do. But even that, there was a hesitance. Yet here you are wanting to fight yourself. So was there a reaction from your inner circle, so to speak?
Are you on drugs?
That was they said.
I heard that more than once. Are you on drugs? My coworkers one time, I actually got COVID in Ukraine. I was supposed to fly back after 2 weeks. Probably the reason I fought is because I got COVID, and the Polish wouldn't let me get on an airplane. So I called the people that I had met in Ukraine. I was like, do you guys mind if I have COVID? And they're like, we don't give a shit. And so I went back, and I was like, well, now I got a month. And so I went to Kyiv, and that's where I met my unit that I ended up staying with, right? So if I didn't get COVID, I probably wouldn't have done all of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, but most people, like I had to call my coworkers, and I was like, hey, I can't come to work for my 2-week rotation in the oil field. Can you cover for me? And they're like, okay, what's wrong? And I was like, well, I'm in Ukraine. Okay. And they were like, oh, well, enjoy your stay, I guess, you know? So have a good time.
Okay, so we've got to the point where you're in the capital now, you're in Kyiv, and what happens next? Is there a place you go to that foreigners are welcome? I know there's a sort of foreign legion there, but I understand you weren't too keen to sign up with them.
No, I kind of knew, I mean, just running businesses, I kind of knew, okay, a bunch of alpha-type personalities from all over the world with very little screening and no leadership structure is probably going to be a mess. I don't know if it was because I never joined the Legion, but I'm pretty sure I heard some stories, and it was a little rodeo there at the beginning. But yeah, there was a guy, an American guy in Kyiv, had an apartment. Some of the other guys that were like aid workers linked up with him, went and stayed at his apartment, and I met a unit that had a bunch of new guys in like civilian clothes, and they said, "Can you help train these guys?" And I was like, "I'll try." And did a little training revolution with them, and they asked if I would be willing to go to Donbass with them, and I had the same thought process I did in Texas. I said, F it, why not? What's the worst that could happen? And wound up in Donbass, immediately asking myself, how the hell did I get here? I need to improve my decision-making ability.
Okay, so you're now in Donbass. They've recognized that you've got some skills from the Marines that they can then sort of take advantage of. At what point then did you then go from within the Donbass? Did you actually then get to the front line itself?
Like immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, I went to the rifle range one day, and they're like, "You're coming with us tomorrow, buddy." And they did a joke. They tried to play a trick on me. This is right around the time Severodonetsk was falling, and about to go. So the fighting was really bad. And the commander of the unit was like, "All right, Nate, we're going to send you to Severodonetsk tomorrow." And I didn't know if it was. I was like, "All right, I guess I didn't get dressed up for nothing, And they were like, "I'm just kidding, psycho. You're not going to. It's a terrible place. You don't want to go there." And I was like, "Well." So the fact that I didn't wilt when they said you're going to Severodonetsk made them more confident that I wasn't going to freak out.
Just try and paint a little picture for us, because we do get a rather skewed image of what the front line is like. Our view, for most people, is the drone imagery. That's what we tend to see all the time. And it's usually the success stories that we see. We don't actually see all the failures, and when the drones don't work. We hear about the trench warfare. We hear about its First World War and sort of Third World War. Can you just allow us to understand? I mean, you seem very jolly, very friendly now. You're not, psychologically scarred, or you seem fine.
Well, I was just psychologically broken before I went. I think that's probably the problem.
Well,
I'm not intelligent enough.
Your decision making about going there might be a bit different matter. But you get to the front line, and did it feel like this is a war zone? Things are dangerous, and all the time your life is in danger.
Oh my God! Immediately, there is no doubt. I think the very first time we drove into a town, we're driving in, and they have this spot where you stop and you put all your body armor on before you get to a certain point. And we come around this bend. It was a little town called Tetyanovka. It was right across the river from Sviatohursk. And as soon as we rounded the crest of this hill, there's like a escarpment that you go down into the town. And as soon as we came around that corner and went down, a 152 shell hit like right next to the vehicle. And I was like, well, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Holy shit, this is real, And that's a rude awakening. I don't know if you've ever been around incoming artillery, but it'll...
Wakes you up.
It wakes you up, yeah, for sure. It's real, and it's real quick. So yeah, there was no doubt about it. And once you were on that zero line, I mean, it's war like you see in movies, right? Where there's artillery, grad, helicopters. I mean, we were getting shot at with K-52 attack helicopters and rocket pods and all kinds of stuff. So it's intense. And I think sometimes when you watch these like videos on Telegram and stuff like that, it's a snapshot, and you don't get that like sense of impending doom that never lifts off your chest when you're in that environment. I mean, you somehow learn to manage the environment you're in, but it's for the guys that are in it, it's like this constant weight of risk and threat, and it never goes away. It never lifts. It's always present.
The front line itself, for many of us, again, watching from afar, it seems to have sort of polarized, stagnated, sort of stopped itself. You were on the front. I mean, clearly it moves a little bit, but the defenses on both sides are phenomenal. Did you spend a lot of your time just in almost like the First World War, just sitting in trenches, looking ahead, and then maybe there'll be a big push at some point?
Yeah, it's like a little cat and mouse game. First of all, I think it's very common for us to kind of dehumanize the enemy. So there's a lot of like, the Russians are stupid, and the Russians are not stupid. They're people. They have the same powers of deduction that we do. They're not dumb. However, if you're a troop, you're going to try to make fun of them at every opportunity, right? So, but it's dangerous to kind of fall into that trap of thinking that they're incapable in some way. they can be dangerous. Sometimes that's the weird thing is there's a inconsistency among Russian troops. So sometimes you get bad ones and you get complacent, and then you meet some good ones, and now you're complacent, and the result of that is death. You die when you do that. So you always have to go into it assuming that this is like Spetsnaz. These are the best guys they have. And then if they turn out to be morons, it's a good day. But yeah, it's like a weird cat and mouse game where you know that you're at risk all the time. There's so much ISR that it's difficult to move or do anything. So you have this little like narrow ability to move from place to place, and you're trying to wait for them to screw up. And they're doing the same thing to you. And neither side wants to die. And the best days are when nobody makes a mistake, to be totally honest with you. I mean, that's where you get to be like, well, hey, nobody got hurt, and those are rare. So.
And your rotation on the front line itself, were you on there for a set period of time, then you'd come back, and then you'd go back on again? Was that the sort of
so a unit would get sent to the front line for, a month or 2 months or something like that, and then within your unit, you'd have a rotation schedule. So, that's the idea. Now, in some environments, in some areas of the front, and luckily I never got stuck like this, but I've heard of guys being stuck in a trench, in a position, on the zero line for over 100 days.
When you say the zero line, you mean?
That means you are on the line of contact.
You're on the line of contact.
Their kind of terminology for it. So.
Yeah. Let's just talk about equipment. You talked about being geared up into your armor and so forth. The weapon that you were given, what was that? AK-47?
Well, 74. So the first thing I got was an AK-74, and then later on we got M4s, which, here's the thing, too. There's a big debate. What's the better weapon? The one that you're trained with. Right, the one that you're capable of using. They both do the same thing. They both put intermediate rifle cartridges about 500 meters, a little longer if you train a little harder. They do the same thing, right? If you train enough, they're equal things.
Okay. On this side of the telescope, the bigger picture, the generals, the leaders, and so on, praise themselves now, fall over themselves, and saying the amount of equipment that we're now sliding across the table to Ukraine. You were on the front line. Did you see it? Was it there piling up, ready for you to use?
Look, I saw some of it, and I was a voracious consumer of history books, particularly World War II, when I was a kid, even to the point where I was reading about production capability. Now, if like what we have given is not nothing, right? And it should be commended for what was received. But relative to our capacity in the West, we have essentially given nothing. And for that, I think we should be ashamed. I think it should be a stain. Now, it's good to point out the things that you've done well, but I am one of those people that likes to focus on the things we suck at. And the things we suck at is production. We suck at producing things. We lost that ability somehow along the way, and we need to get better. And especially if there is a large war with China, production will be pretty much the deciding factor. And right now, they're winning that.
Such an important point, the ability to stockpile and so forth like that. On the munitions side, First World War, the wars you sort of mentioned, I think 80%, maybe more, of casualties in the First World War were from artillery shelling. On a daily basis, what was that your experience of artillery shells coming in? And it was basically artillery shells rather than anything clever, the smart missiles and so forth, but just the 155s and so on.
Yeah, no, artillery is still a devastating weapon. I mean, anybody that thinks it's not, now with the advent of drones can somewhat outrange artillery. So if you have towed artillery or something like that is not able to move quickly, it just becomes a target. Now you'll start to see the mobile artillery like the Caesar that's parked out front that can set up and shoot quickly and then move. They still have a value, but if you think about it, drones are just kind of an extension of artillery. It's just ordnance delivery to a target, right? It's just another means of doing it that just happens to be a little cheaper than building a tube and spending a bunch of money on forging artillery shells. So you get away with delivering that ordnance it's a little bit more cost effective, but essentially it's doing the exact same thing. It doesn't add some new crazy weird capability, except for some guys aiming it at you and trying to hunt you down. That's creepy.
Let's talk about drones for a second, because again, many of the armchair generals, and don't want to be rude here, but even myself, we can't imagine what it must be like. Is it even the sound of a drone? Does that send a sense of fear? Is it weird? Is it?
Oh yeah, some security guy was flying a drone at about 6 in the morning in the lobby, and I'm just kind of an insomniac. So I woke up at 5 and went for a walk for a few miles, and then I sit in the lobby and this guy's flying a drone, and as soon as I heard that, brrr, I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, man, really? That is uncalled for. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be doing that in here. And he was just doing it for fun. So I was looking at him like, man, that's not cool.
Take us through when you're in your bunker, or you're on the front line, or the zero line as you call it. Is there a siren? Is there an alarm? Is something goes off to say that something there is a? Because what we're talking about is not the big incoming drones that hit the capital city.
Correct. Yeah.
They get a warning. We get your app. Something happens. On the front line, it's going to be the short stuff. It's going to be.
Yeah. Well, Group 1 drones is what NATO would refer to them as. So that's basically your quadcopters, your small things that could carry an RPG shell strapped to the bottom of it, roughly. And they do have detectors for them. Sometimes you get a call on the radio if somebody sees one, or you can hear it coming. And the FPVs have a different tone. They're pretty loud, and pretty much I don't know how many Ukrainian drones I shot down, but if it had 4 blades and it was over me, I'm trying to kill it. I didn't, we would call on the radio and we'd be like, is that our drone? And if there was not an immediate answer that yes, that's ours, we'd shoot it down. But the FPVs are pretty quick. They're hard to hit. So, I mean, the idea is just to not be outside of cover very long unless you have to. And that's generally a good practice, whether it's artillery or drones.
And when we're looking at shelter, what sort of depth of shelter do you now need in modern warfare? Do you now require?
Well, so depth of shelter is not. It doesn't change things that dramatically because the Group 1 drones are not carrying shells that are as powerful as artillery, but they're more accurate. Like they can fly it into a doorway, which is terrifying. So, as far as overhead, I mean, if you dug a bunker that can handle artillery, you're protected physically from those Group 1 drones. But now you have to deal with the concept of them coming through the door. So now you got to barricade the door, or put a fence up, or some kind of drone net on it.
And is it a visibility thing as well? Is it just not being seen? Is it just making sure?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the targeting process, right? They see you, then they target you, and then they kill you, right? So if you're not seen in the first place, and that's what we call concealment, if you remain concealed, you're probably not going to get targeted. But if you, I don't care how much camouflage you put on, bushes don't stand up and walk around, right? So, if you have to move, there's a pretty high likelihood you're going to get seen.
Okay, yeah. And everybody looks at Ukraine, particularly what's happened in Poland now, and says, this is a laboratory on where the character of conduct of warfare is actually going. You said you tried to shoot the drones down, but are there cleverer ways that were coming in as a counter-drone capability?
Yeah, I mean, the big ones, I never personally got to handle them, but the laser weapons is going to be a big deal because the problem with shooting down any aerial target is the cost exchange ratio. And, kinetic interceptors are just always going to cost more than the things they're intercepting. So you're on the wrong side of that cost exchange ratio pretty much right off the bat. But with those direct energy weapons, if we can figure out how to make those in a cost-effective manner, then I think you kind of take away that ability for drones to have such a major effect.
When did you come out?
About 5 days before the inauguration.
5 days before the inauguration?
Yeah, roughly.
So the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
Beginning of the year. What made you decide to leave and not stay?
Well, I figured, I had a cousin who was a senator. The guys in my unit knew it. They were very protective of me in that respect. So if there were journalists around, they'd be like, hey, you can't take any pictures of that guy. And then they wouldn't tell them why. But, you can kind of hide. A senator, you can kind of hide. But once he's in the administration, I'm like, somebody's going to figure this out. And at some point, I would either be a target, in which case if they target me, the people around me are at risk. That's not fair to them. Or they could get their hands on me, and that's not fair to my country.
So is it fair to say that had that not happened, that the inauguration hadn't gone the way, or the election hadn't gone the way, you might still be there today?
I might still be there. I may not be alive.
No, that's...
You know what I mean?
No,
so, I was kind of aggravated that, I was like, God damn it, you had to win now, you know what I mean? But, in retrospect, it may have saved my life, right? So I guess I shouldn't complain too much.
Yeah, well, it's to our benefit that then we can hear your story as well. You talk about winning, though, and this is the big question. This is your first Warsaw Security Forum, and you're very welcome. Some of us have been here many years, and we actually almost have the same conversations every time. Self-congratulation, NATO getting bigger, doing more and so on. But actually the situation on the ground, the hardship that Russia can endure, what do you see needs to happen to conclude this?
Well, look, the first thing, and don't get me wrong, like I have my lived experiences, right? And then I've watched some of these panels and I listen to people who talk about their perceptions of what's happening over there on the ground. And it feels like a fever dream kind of watching some of these people talk. I'm like, what the hell are you talking? What war are you referring to? Because that doesn't sound anything like there's the bridge between my lived experiences and some of the perceptions is a long bridge, right? So I think that they're like, and one thing that I've thought about and I've kind of wondered is like when I got back, the U.S. government never even once reached out and said, hey, would you like to go over some like lessons learned? And I don't think that's happening anywhere. I don't think it's happening anywhere, not just with me, but with any of those people that have come home and with the Ukrainian troops on the ground. I don't think those lessons are being learned. And if they're not learned, we're going to repeat mistakes that are happening over there that happened in 2022. And so I think the first step is really getting involved with the ground level people and finding out what the actual hardships are. And that's how you solve the problems.
It's really been fascinating to speak with you. We've got about a minute left. I'm curious to just open it up to the floor if there are any questions. So if you just quickly say who you are and then keep the questions short because I know the time is short.
Hello, I'm Bennett Murray. I used to be a war journalist. Now I'm a grad student studying war. I've been on the zero lines a bit, but not nearly as much as you have, obviously. I just wanted to ask you to explain quickly how the character of the war has changed from 2022 up until you left in 2025. Thank you.
I think the main thing that you can see is the reliance on drones, which I think started as a stopgap measure for artillery, the lack of artillery, right? So we can deliver ordnance with these things. But then the effectiveness of it made itself evident. So now you started to see, a lot of investment in that. And then I think on both sides you have a little bit of, where the attrition is high enough on both sides where training and things like that are starting to suffer because they don't have time. And I mean, that I know for a fact. That's actually one of the things. The training has been an issue on the Ukrainian side long enough to where the troops are like, look, if we complain about this, we might get in trouble, but nobody can get pissed off at you. So if you get the opportunity, please mention that we need to improve our infantry training program and make it uniform across all units because it isn't. And that needs to be addressed.
My final question is, would you like to see Ukraine push Russia all the way back out of Ukrainian territory?
Oh, I'm a little too aggressive. I'd push them all the way back to the Volga River if I had the opportunity to. So,
that is the optimism that we'd like to see. So, Nate, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts. I hope everybody has appreciated it. It is from a very different part of the telescope that we're looking at from the other end. Having said that, I do hope that some of the thoughts and views that you've picked up here, that the next time you see the other Mr. Vance, that you might be able to share not only your stories, but also the views here, that the more that America and Europe are on the same page, the more we will achieve that very aim that you spoke of. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we say thank you very much indeed to Nate? Thank you very much indeed.